It's Joe Solari, and this is the business of writing. And for those that are watching this, only 20% of you are actually subscribed to this channel. So please hit that subscribe button so we can get that number up. Today, we're going to be talking with Kate Baucherel, and we're going to be talking about NFTs, blockchains, and all kinds of crypto stuff and how it is going to impact publishing. How are you doing, Kate?
I'm fantastic. Thanks, Joe. Nice to be here.
So we got introduced in the 20 Books group. We were tasked by Craig to put together an article for the group to help them understand all this fun stuff that's going on in the crypto world. And lo and behold, there happened to be an expert in the group, being you, that could really help. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit about like how you got involved in this weird world that is coming upon us, and how that brought you into publishing, and then we can go from there and just help people to understand all the fun stuff that's associated with this.
Sure. So Kate's journey down the rabbit hole. So my background's actually accountancy. So I trained as an accountant. I worked in business for 25 years. And early on in my career, so after I'd finished university and before I did my proper professional qualifications, I got a job in Denver, Colorado, and I went to work for an IBM business partner there. And so I was hands-on with tech very, very early on. I mean, way before World Wide Web. I mean, this was when really new computers only needed a small room to fit in. It was exciting stuff. And I came back to the UK quite a long way ahead of my contemporaries around knowing my way around tech. So I ended up being the accountant who could do tech. So I ended up with this dual role all the way through my career. So I was CFO of a subsidiary of ITV, the broadcasting company in the UK, when I did my last full accounting job. But I was also there doing a whole bunch of stuff around reporting and systems and so on. So when I moved away from full-time accounting, I moved into a series of businesses building software, and I was actually working on websites and social and all sorts of stuff. And one of the clients that we were working with came and said, I've decided I'm not going to use your software, which was a bit of a kicker because we'd been working for quite a long time on this client. And I said, no, I'm going to use Ethereum. I said, well, what's Ethereum? Because I hadn't heard of it at all. And I went and started hunting, and this was 2015. So Ethereum was literally just launching. It was allowing people to build software, I think even in their sandbox, so before it properly went live. And I looked at what it was, and I said, well, as an accountant and a technician, that's a ledger. And I understood exactly what it was, what it did, what its properties were. And I just listened, learned, talked to people, absolutely loved it, realized it was something new and just really exciting that had a huge amount of potential. And I just got deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And eventually that's kind of all I end up talking about these days.
Yeah. So I know you've since then you've gone to a lot of, like, you've gone to South by Southwest. You're actively trying to stay on the edge of this technology. Can you kind of share some of the
sure.
things you're doing around that?
So I went off to, I love South by Southwest. It's the place that I go to talk to the people who are doing the cutting edge things and to really learn and to keep bang up to date with what's happening. And very early on, I met the people behind Consensus, and I listened to what they were doing, and I met the people behind Hyperledger, and I listened to what they were doing, and I did all sorts of little courses as well, because I'm not a coder, but I like to get my hands dirty and understand where things come from and get an appreciation of the systems. And I did all of the little courses that were appearing to familiarize people with blockchain. And I'd already at that point written one book around digital business. And in between times, I started writing some fiction as well, which is why I ended up in 20 books to 50K actually. And then I was approached to write what became an MBA textbook for around blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I so I was approached to write this MBA textbook, and that came out a year ago. But of course, it was a year in the making and a year in, in preparation and interviews and so on. And really just digging so deep into the topic and understanding all of the perspectives and the history and the applications. I spoke to people all around the world who were using blockchain and crypto in different ways, and some of the assumptions that we make in our lives about how useful it's going to be are based on our culture and our experience and what we already have at our fingertips. And this kind of technology is really transformational in a lot of different industries and in a lot of different countries and in different ways. And I've just absolutely loved this journey through something that makes people think about their processes and their the way that they share revenue and the way that they manage information and the benefits that can cascade down to people from farmers and producers and to creators like us around the world. So I can waffle on for a long time.
Sure. And I think that's part of this that's hard is when you're kind of at the beginning of one of these transformational curves, people forget about, you say ledger. Well, there was a time where ledgers were physical books with people writing in the 2 columns, right? And that is the underlying structure of accounting, but now we don't see all that stuff. It's hidden behind things like QuickBooks and inside our spreadsheets. And you think about how the financial markets have changed. I'm in Chicago, and we were one of the last places to give up the open cry, trading pits. That's how commodities were till just a few years ago were traded. But everywhere else, things are completely electronic and markets are made digitally now versus 2 guys yelling across a room who's going to buy and who's going to sell, right? So, but if you're in those times where you have that status quo, you value that, right? If you're an open cry trader, you don't see how things are going to change, nor do you really want them to change.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's when you're comfortable with the systems that you have, sometimes you don't realize how things can be different. I guess that's something I'd never thought of, what you said just then around ledgers being physical, because I'm actually old enough that sounds awful, I have done written ledgers in little red books. I've been in companies that didn't have computers.
Right. My mom was a bookkeeper, and it was back in high school, but when I took an intro to accounting class in high school, you got the workbook, and it was all about how do you make ledger entries and how does that flow through to a balance sheet. That was all manual. Yeah.
That's actually quite a good comparison with the way that now blockchain is coming in to change processes, because we started off with the written ledger, and in a written ledger you write down where the invoice came from and how much it was. Mm-hmm. And then when we started getting accounting information systems, suddenly you could link that through and say, well, actually we've had 5 invoices from this person for this amount, and you started to get richer data. So the arrival of ledgers on computers gave us this much richer data and these really much more interesting decision-making capabilities. And they changed the processes. They changed the whole process of doing accounting stuff. And it's got to the point that it's actually pretty straightforward using software for anybody to do good accounts, to keep good books. And that's got a really nice parallel with what's happening with blockchain, because it is a ledger of transactions, but it's one where you don't need someone sitting in the middle with the red book to write everything down. It's a ledger where it's set up in a way that you put your transaction in and everyone else goes, that's fine, because of the way the mechanisms of the blockchain work. So it's another step forward. And if you, I mean, we talk about accounting and about the movement of cash and invoices, and I guess Bitcoin started off, the very, very first one of these, as movement of an asset, movement of a coin or a part of a coin from one owner to another. And then you start thinking, well, what else moves? What other transactions are there where something moves from one owner to another? And if you ask that really simple question, you suddenly realize a lot of the things around us are something moving from one owner to another. And because it's not just written down, it's programmed, you've got the chance, like you did going back to the original accounting systems, to add a whole bunch more data. So we could say, this thing has moved from one person to another. The conditions of the move are that some of the money goes to the original creator, or the thing that's moved is we've accepted your delivery, and that triggers a payment. Or it could be the thing that's moved is my house has now been sold to someone else, so that goes on the land registry. And so these are all transactions that are all programmable, and that's kind of all it is. It's remarkably straightforward underneath.
Sure. So that, there's that. Maybe it might help for some folks that are new to this is to just kind of like lay out some of these definitions. So we talked a little bit about the blockchain as being this ledger system. Right now, the hype is all around non-fungible tokens and the money that's being made there. And is that something that is meaningful for publishers? Maybe we could break out some of those things and talk through those and help, somebody who's in the publishing market understand how this might impact them.
Well, let's break it down back to where this blockchain thing came from and just get a feel for the transactions. And then we can slide into what an NFT is, because they kind of follow on nicely. So when I said that I put my transaction in and everyone says, yes, that's fine. This is the mechanism that was invented by whoever or whatever group of people is Satoshi Nakamoto. And that was an idea that you would have a coin that didn't need a bank. And they worked out a way to let the network agree that the transactions were valid. So yes, my money exists, it's here, and I'm sending it to something that exists. That's okay. And to confirm by putting a little timestamp on it that it happened at this time and it's part of the record for the movement of Bitcoins. And what you end up with is a block of data, a block of transactions, and they're in a chain. So we called it a blockchain. It's very simple. Strictly speaking, it's a distributed ledger. So you'll also hear distributed ledger technology. So what that means is that instead of having one red book on your desk, everybody's got an identical copy of the red book and it all updates at the same time. So we have this chain of blocks of transactions. And there are many, many different blockchains. So I mentioned Ethereum earlier. That's another blockchain. And it's the same underlying principle of recording movements, recording a transaction, recording the movement of something from here to there. And everyone being, yeah, that's fine. I agree. That's okay. And I can go and check it and verify it against the block. But what you get with Ethereum is that you get the chance to write software on top of it, so that you can say, well, I don't want it to just be a coin that moves. I want it to be something different. And so this is where we start to get things that are not coins that have value. So they could be, I'm just trying to think of a really, if we take it to gaming, because gaming is where a lot of these things start. And if anyone's familiar with playing something like, I don't know, Zelda, you have a certain number of arrows, or you have a certain number of particularly common swords, and they can be bought and sold in the game. When you're playing things like World of Warcraft, they can be bought and sold outside as well. And so those are actually assets. You can trade with them. And then you might have something that's really special in a game, where there's only one of them, a particularly impressive enemy or something like that. So if there's only one of them, that's still a thing. That's still a thing that's digital. And that could move as well. So it's a bit of a leap to say there are things that aren't coins that could move. So when coins are programmable, they can be anything you want them to be. They could be a measurement of time. They could be a measurement of your effort in something. They could be they could be a book. Mm-hmm. They could be a piece of music. They could be a piece in a game. And so what the blockchain structure gives us is an agreed movement of things without having someone in the middle who can maybe go into the database and change things. Can't do that. And so you're able to track these movements. So we don't talk really about coins now, except when you're paying for stuff. We tend to talk about digital assets or crypto assets. And those crypto assets can be something where it's exactly the same and you stack them high, like a coin, like some arrows, whatever. Or it could be something individual and special. And because of a particular word that defines this, we've ended up with NFTs. So fungible is the technical term for something like a dollar bill, where you can spend the dollar bill I have in this pocket or the dollar bill I have in that pocket, and they'll both buy the same thing. You can exchange them as many times as you like, and you can still buy the same thing with them. But if something is non-fungible, it's not the same. So it could be I've got a dollar bill and I've got another one that I've got it was the only thing I had in my pocket when I met my hero and they signed it. Is that now more valuable? Mm. Yeah, it's more valuable to me. It isn't the same as that dollar anymore. So the value can change. So we ended up with the phrase non-fungible token, something that's like but not identical to another non-fungible token, and that became NFT, because fungible is a lovely word, but it's a bit heavy to say all the time.
So how for folks that are kind of new to this, how are artists using this today? And that doesn't necessarily mean publishing, but how are artists today using the non-fungible token to create works and get compensated for those works?
Okay, so I mean, digital art has been around for a very long time, but the challenge with digital art is you can't prove that you own it. And I think that's the key thing. You can't prove that it's yours because once you've right-clicked and downloaded it from some shady website, you could have a copy as well. And what the blockchain gives us with NFTs is a proof of ownership of a piece of digital art. So the thing that is the token that moves around, the asset that moves around, isn't actually the picture, because you can't put that much detail into the chain. It's the ownership of a particular thing. So what artists are able to do is to say, here is a piece of digital art, and they will sell the ownership of that digital art, and that ownership moves around on secondary, tertiary markets. But when that ownership transfers for money, it's written into the code that the artist gets a certain amount. The platform that they've sold it through will get a royalty, a bit like Amazon taking their 30% on your ebooks. There may be, if there's let's take an example from music. Actually, if you sample something with the permission of the originator, then they could have some of the share all the way through the life of that ownership. And there are also opportunities arising now to have extra special things that open up only for the owner. One of the very first pieces of Bitcoin of crypto art was done by a lady called Marguerite de Courcelles, who did a crypto puzzle, and there was a prize that opened around the ownership of that.
Mm. Yeah, I've heard a few things around that where artists are taking either a series of work or and when you get the collection, then it releases something else that they you unlock, and then you get the song or whatever it might be.
We see all sorts of things like that. Actually, I have a friend who started doing their own crypto art. They've been an artist for 35 years, proper fine artist with training and a lot of experience. And he initially offered a physical copy of the artwork alongside the ownership, and nobody took him up on it. They were completely happy with ownership of the digital asset, which actually is an interesting one for something that is becoming wholly digital.
Yeah, it is. So, we're coming at this from the perspective of publishing, and authors tend to get excited about these things and rush to the next shiny object. And can you kind of put in context kind of where you think it is today for publishing and where you think it's going to go for publishing?
Yeah, it's more of an awareness and bolt-on tool than it is a publishing tool. Is the main thing. I guess. I mean, I'm looking around the room I'm sitting in at the moment, and I can see I've got an original artwork in the room, and then I've got a load of fabulous books going back to my grandparents' time. And I know that I can go and get a copy of any of those books if something goes wrong, but I can't replace the painting. And crypto art follows the same process, the same, I guess, route as traditional art, in that you'll have a single edition that moves through multiple owners, or a collection of related items that move through multiple owners. Whereas with books, we have one creative with many versions of it, many things. So it's more of a fungible token than a non-fungible token if you look at a book. So what is the attraction for somebody to buy an NFT? What is the attraction for someone to buy a crypto book? Well, it would have to be collectible. It would have to be that dollar bill with the signature on.
Sure.
It would have to have something special about it. And so that takes you down the route of, could you use this as a reader magnet, a reward to your fans, something absolutely unique and special that you can offer? And then as that collectible changes hands, you still get paid for it. But it's got to have that collectible aspect to it in order to succeed. I mean, no one's just going to buy an NFT book because they can buy it everywhere else.
Right. And I also think that, at least from the work that I've done looking at the publishing market and its economics, one of the things that makes it where, certain authors become the most popular author is the ability that the reader doesn't see all urban fantasy books as an equal substitute, right? So I don't want, if you and I are both urban fantasy writers, I'm not just going to go read yours because there's no more or, a reader is going to just read yours because there's no more of my books. And the ability to always get a copy of my book, because for me to produce a copy of a book is so low, right? So I can sell 1 million copies, because especially now that it's digital. That's actually the opposite of what an NFT is, right? It's the fact that I can make all these multiple reproductions and I can sell them at a super low cost to a bunch of people, versus, like you're saying, a collectible where it's like, this is one of 10 books. Yes. And we've certainly seen, you and I were talking about this when we were doing our research. There's, this isn't, that part for publishing isn't new, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah, right. It's just maybe using a different platform to do it, rather than selling leather-bound limited edition books on Kickstarter or off your own website. Now you're doing it as some kind of digital work.
Yes,
and
very much.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had if my, actually, good example, when I moved house, I moved region once, and I had to get rid of quite a few things because I was downsizing. And one of the things that I let go with great sadness was my early Doctor Who Target books. Just little books that I bought from the age of, from when I got pocket money, pretty much. And I missed them, and I went looking for them in secondhand bookshops, and I got some of my favorites back. Not my book, obviously, but you couldn't buy them anymore. And I had to go to a secondary market to get them. Wouldn't it have been nice if the original author had got some of the royalties from those? So they become collectible. Things become collectible. So I think with an NFT, what you need to create is something that will become collectible. And you can't wait for the fullness of time and so on for that to happen. But you have to be aware it's got to be a collectible thing that people will go and seek out.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the things we were talking about too was that this isn't just something that a bunch of artists are looking at. We know that Amazon is spending time, money, and actually has patents involved in this. So can you talk a little bit about how, kind of
what's going on with that? Well, Amazon's a big place. So way back when the whole crypto thing was starting to buzz, so around about 2017 thereabouts, we noticed that some of the really big players had started filing patents, filing names, brands, and we were all waiting for something to drop. And the thing that dropped first was Facebook with their Libra coin that they proposed, and which still hasn't made an appearance. But there was some good money on it being Amazon first, actually. Whether they would take the plunge and create their own cryptocurrency. So we knew that the very big companies are as interested in blockchain and crypto as people like me. Amazon, I know people who work for Amazon Blockchain. It exists. There is a lot of work being done in the background for people who are using blockchain in business. So we're not talking about NFTs here. We're talking about blockchain systems in business. Think about those ledgers for the movement of everything from consumables and nuts and bolts and so on. So Amazon have their web services, their servers. That's the cloud to you and me. And of course they want people to be running blockchain on that, and because it's a complicated and new thing, there is an Amazon blockchain. I think it properly launched around about December, actually. And Microsoft have got the same. Microsoft have got their Azure servers, so another piece of cloud, doesn't float, just sits in all the server farms. And they also have Microsoft blockchain. So this isn't unusual. The big companies, including Amazon, are on board with what blockchain can do. So the idea, it may well be that in the background we'll see things like the royalty payments speeding up for authors, because Amazon managed them using automated acceptance and payment, which there's a term called smart contracts that we use in blockchain, which is kind of ironic because it's not something smart and it's not a contract. It's just the code that says, when are we going to pay these people? When all of these things have been fulfilled, we will pay, and it's done automatically. That's all it is. So I think that blockchain wise, we're going to see some of the processes that we use as authors may well speed up because Amazon know what they're doing. Crypto wise, different space entirely, but Amazon know what's going on. So
yeah, and I just thinking about their business, I think there's other issues. There's the infrastructural piece, right? Like, can we make transactions go faster and have really clean records?
Yes.
The other part of it is, as authors, we see it as piracy, but one of the, a huge issue for Amazon is counterfeit goods.
Yes.
Right. So being able to use, the ideas behind something like NFTs to prove that, yes, that is really a Chanel purse.
Yes.
That was made in the factory, and, those kind of things are big issues for the brand owners on one hand, and then when it comes time to deal with counterfeiting, it's just like piracy, right? It's impossible to get all the different pirates. So what you do is you go after where they congregate, like a place like Amazon, so they can fix that problem.
Yeah, it's true that blockchain does give you that verification, and certainly, I know that the luxury goods companies are already using blockchain for this. I mean, there's Everledger in the diamond industry. There's Louis Vuitton have got their own blockchain working. We've got car manufacturers who are using blockchain in supply chains to make sure that they're sourcing cobalt from the right place, that kind of thing. So this is all already happening. This is all already there in industry. What is kind of interesting, if we take it right back to basics, is when we talked about Bitcoin moving from one person to another, and we timestamp the transaction, and you can go back and check it. So what that means is that actually we can timestamp when something is recorded on the chain, and because we use unique strings, hashes of content to enter into the chain, you can go back and say, I'm going to run my book through an encryption program, and it will churn out this long list of letters and numbers, and you can put that into the blockchain and go, on this day I'm going to lodge this on the chain. And then 6 months down the line, someone else goes, but I wrote that book. And you can go, no, you didn't. Here is the original. And if you hash the original, it will verify it's the same thing. Look, I wrote this and I lodged it on this day. And I think we were talking about how copyright is, that might smooth things around the copyright for business
sure.
as well.
Yeah, I think that at least in the United States, that's a system that really needs a serious update. But being the government, it'll take a long time. It'll be a big contract and all that fun stuff that comes with that. But clearly the system that's in place now isn't the best. But when it comes to, at least here with most authors, it's not the system that's failing them. It's the fact that they don't actually go and register their copyright.
And it varies from country to country as well, because we don't have a formal register like that in the UK. So it's, Yeah.
So, awesome. So, where can folks find out more about you and more about, what you're doing around blockchain and kind of being a thought leader and crypto and all that fun stuff?
I'm all over the place. So Baucherel is a fairly easy search term because there's very few of us. Just spell it right. So I have a book out called Blockchain Hurricane, which is available from Business Expert Press and from Harvard Business Publishing, because it's on the Harvard catalog now as well, and is also on all good bookstores. And I also co-author the What's Hot in Blockchain and Crypto series, which is a series of interviews with people using blockchain and working with crypto all around the world in different ways. So there are 2 editions of that now published, 3rd one on the way. So there's some great little stories in there. And I lurk all over the place on Twitter and on LinkedIn predominantly as well. So right. Googling Kate Baucherel will generally find me and all of the work that I do. So there's a lot of information out there, and there's a couple of YouTube channels as well.
Awesome. And you've got some fiction out there you're writing as well.
Oh yes, indeed I do. I was approached to write a cybersecurity book because obviously I write books about tech, and after a few chats, my potential co-author said, why don't you do it as fiction? And I said, don't be silly, I can't write fiction. And then 8 months later, after all being nagged for the entire time, I wrote the first 300 words. I'm now 10,000 words into the 4th book in the series. So that, yes, there is a series of cybercrime books, cybercrime thrillers out, starting with, confusingly, Bitcoin Hurricane, which are available all around the place, on Amazon predominantly, but in other places as well. And I also write short stories around tech and around just random fun sci-fi, fantasy, fun things as well.
Cool. Well, Kate, it's been great having you on. I appreciate all the research you've done and kind of clarifying some of these things for us. I think it's just gonna be some fun times as some folks figure this stuff out. There's going to be some real interesting ways that authors can start to think about using, this new technology and interesting ways to help them, make their fans collectibles or, connect in ways that they haven't been able to in the past.
Yeah.
All right. Good having you on.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, Kate.